Hi everyone. I can see some attendance. We've got 19 joining us at the moment. So thank you very much for joining us today. I know we had it planned for a networking event, but glad we can see you over our webinar. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians and sovereign people of the land across which we work, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. I also want to extend that respect to any Aboriginal colleagues and participants joining us tonight. We're excited to have Peggy Huang presenting tonight. Following Peggy's presentation, you'll also get to meet members from our panel, and they represent our allied health, our community organisation and GP member networks. I want to thank our panel members for making themselves available at such a challenging time, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them this evening. Just a few housekeeping reminders as part of this webinar. You'll see a questions box, which you can submit your questions by typing in your questions tab, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the presentation. If you have any difficulty with your audio or video, please check your settings and connection. And at the end of the session, you'll receive a link to the online evaluation form, and that needs to be completed to receive your certificate of attendance tonight. Certificates will generally take between 1 to 2 weeks. So by the beginning or by the 20th of April is when you can expect those certificates with our timeframes currently. So we want to make this webinar as interactive as possible. We're going to work with our technology tonight. I really want to start off with an e-meet and greet with all of you. So if you could go down to your chat box, just type your name, your role and who you work for, and we'll see who we have joining us tonight. So I'll start. I'm Megan Platt. I'm the engagement lead with our Central and Eastern Sydney Primary Health Network. All right, so you should be able to see my comment there. A reminder just to use the chat function. Some of you may be entering your details into our questions. So we have 2 boxes there to get used to. We have our chat function, which you can send your messages to privately to myself, or you can also send to our entire audience. And any questions or technical problems that you want addressed offline, we'll use our questions box, and those will be directed to our panel tonight a little later in the evening. Hi, Janet. Hi, Natalie. Hi, Lauren. I can see 35 people have joined us, so you're very quiet in the background. I'd love to hear from you if you have time. For now, we'll keep going, but if you do get the chance, in our chat field, we'd love to know who you are and where you work, or just your name if you're not sure about sharing your details. Okay, hi Martina, hi Rebecca. So moving to the next slide, I want to introduce Peggy Huang. I've got a message here that some of you can only see the question box, so leave that with me. I can see your comments coming through our questions box. Hi Loretta, thanks for joining us. Okay, so introducing Peggy Huang. Peggy's a board director at Three Bridges Community and has recently completed term as a chair of the Central and Eastern Sydney Allied Health Network Board of Directors, and she was there from 2017 to early 2020. In addition to volunteering for the Dietitians Association of Australia, she previously volunteered on our Exercise Sports Science Australia New South Wales chapter from 2010 to 2018 and was co-chair in 2017. Peggy currently works in health, education and leadership development, building the management skills of current aspiring managers and leaders across New South Wales Health. And she's also a member of the CESPN Clinical Leaders Network and Clinical Council. So I want to welcome Peggy. Shortly after her session tonight, she'll introduce our panel and we can go from there with more of your questions. I will take myself off mute and we'll hear more from Peggy now. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you for everyone for joining us tonight. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes, thank you. Thanks, Natalie. Okay, so what I have here is a QR code, so a quick response code. Before I get started, I've got a little bit more housekeeping to do. If you can please scan this QR code with your phone or go to menti.com and type in the code 267960. That's what you see on the top bar. So with QR codes, it's basically a quick response code. It gets you to a website really quickly. All you need to do is, depending on what phone you have, I've got an S9, so just open the camera button, scan it, and then it'll pop up a question, web page, tap here to go to Mentimeter on your browser. So just tap there. Otherwise, if you're having trouble with that, just simply go to Menti and use the code 267960. I would really recommend going to Menti with your phone. So if you have a mobile phone next to you, so please join using your mobile phone. Once you're in, can you please click the like button just so I know, just so no one gets left behind? Great, there's a heap of people. So think of your phone today as your interaction controller. So it's your remote control to participate in this webinar, and think of your screen as the webinar slides and the information. So by screen, I mean your desktop, your laptop screen. So I'll just give a little bit more time for more people to get into Mentimeter and to get into the webinar. Quick explanation of Mentimeter. It's basically an interaction tool that we can use to do word clouds, build word clouds together, do ranking exercises, and participate in polls. All your responses are anonymous. So there's no way myself or anyone, any staff member from PHN can go back and trace who responded to what. But if any question comes up and you prefer not to answer, that's completely fine. You can skip to the next slide. It won't prevent you from progressing. So if you're having issues with Mentimeter, that's okay. You are still able to participate in the webinar, so you can see how other people have voted and you can see their responses, but obviously you won't be able to contribute. So for anyone joining late, I have the Mentimeter code, just the code on the top bar, visible throughout the whole presentation. So another feature with Mentimeter, I'm just still waiting for a few more people to join. The slides update in real time. So when I advance a slide on your phone, it will advance a slide as well. So no worry about getting lost. If you do get stuck, just refresh your page or drag your screen down. That should fix it. Another thing about Mentimeter is that if you like any information, feel free to copy it. So copy and paste, or even take a screenshot of it. Megan will, after tonight, send through some information through to your emails, including some links that I'll share via Mentimeter. So during tonight, happy to take questions. We do have a dedicated panel session at the end though. So if you do have a question, feel free to pop it into the chat box, which Megan will moderate. So far we've got 24 people in Mentimeter as far as I can see. So I'll move on. So we can see that 16 people, 18 now, have voted. And at the moment, most people are familiar with webinars. So when you see Head and Shoulders kind of icon on the bottom right-hand corner, you know that it's an activity. So feel free to get out your phone and participate. So all other slides that aren't voting or not interactive, they would just have the like button and the heart button in the corner. We have a fair few people who haven't been on webinars before or have rarely been on webinars. So we'll take it slow, start off very slowly so that we are all on the same page. So we're not going to jump right into content just yet. Still want to continue on with getting to learn a bit more about you before we jump into the content. So what's your experience with Mentimeter? So don't worry if you've never used Mentimeter before. It's very, very intuitive. So just give a few more seconds for any more votes. Okay, so thank you for providing your input. So if you're new to Mentimeter, don't worry, it's very easy to use. If you're having issues, feel free to pop a message to Megan and get some advice from her. So now we're onto the contents. So I'll just run through tonight's topics. We're going to begin with discussing leadership traits and styles, summarize some strategies to become more influential and achieve results, go through the stages of team development, and really challenge the traditional beliefs about leadership and encourage leadership behaviors at all levels of experience. So challenging that typical vision of or stereotype of a leader being extroverted, social, very confident, direct, ultra competitive. And if you know me, I don't tick any of those boxes. At the end of the content, then we'll go through to the PHN and talk a bit about the PHN and its member networks. And you'll also get to hear from representatives and panelists and chairs from those member networks. And hopefully during tonight, we'll be able to increase your confidence in using online tools as well. So firstly, a bit about your background. If you can please select the best category. What I'll do here is I'll give 30 seconds till voting closes. And don't worry if you don't get your vote in before the time, I can always reset the time. So I will stay quiet when people are voting just so you can have time to do that. So you've got here a lot of allied health. So allied health includes allied health assistance. Okay. So I've just reopened voting just for anyone who hasn't got a vote in to give their input. So thanks for your response there. We got a fair, a good cross-section. Obviously a lot more allied health today, but a good representation of people that are key players in the primary healthcare scene. So a bit more about, just want to do a bit more, learn a bit more about your background. So your leadership journey. Please select, there's only 4 categories, but please select what best suits you. So for example, you're already a good leader, or you're not interested in a leadership role, which is quite okay. And we can see that we've got so far, a good spread. I'll set the timer on again. say 30 seconds. So we have a very good spread, which is very good, which is what I was hoping for tonight. It's from experienced leaders to people that are here for interest, which is very good. So if you've joined the event when it was initially a dinner event, a networking event, the main idea of today was to get a good cross-section of people so we can have some networking. So hopefully we do have a good cross-section of different health practitioners and leadership levels. Hopefully we can get some good discussion going in the chat room. And obviously also in the panel later on. Okay, so we're just going to do a little bit of an activity before we go into leadership traits. Say I give you $100 to spend on buying the most important leadership trait. So what do you value? What do you think is the most valued in becoming a good leader? So for example, if you think that motivation is the only thing that counts, then you'd give it $100, which also means you won't have anything else to spend anywhere else. This is a bit more of a tricky question. Just getting your opinion first, and then we'll discuss. I'll give 2 minutes. So keep in mind, there's no right or wrong answers. It does depend. So you can see that a lot of results are coming now with the numbers in the bottom right-hand corner updating. So 5 responses so far. And currently in the lead is emotional resilience. So if you've already voted and you've finished, have a look at these traits and see if you can come up with some sort of a pattern or similarity between these traits. See if you notice anything between these 8 traits. So we've got about 40 seconds till we close the vote. So if you've finished and you've had to think about these traits and you've worked out a common link between these 8 traits, then feel free to pop it in the chat box. What I've done is I've cancelled the countdown so more people can vote. So I'll give it just a little bit more time. 10 more seconds. Okay, so if you've noticed that all these traits are linked to mental toughness, then you'll be correct. So research has shown that these 8 traits are linked to mental toughness. Mental toughness has long been associated with athletic performance, and now in more recent times, the successful leadership. We'll move on to the next slide and talk about the other traits that are important in leadership. So these traits all come from this book, Management Theory and Practice by Cole. So in his book, he's actually compiled the 8 traits you've seen before, and in addition to those, 5 other traits. So out of all his traits that he's documented, he's noted that the most important 3 are intelligence, initiative, and self-assurance. So with intelligence, it's not necessarily genius level, just a bit above average, enough to solve complex problems. But as we'll see, that intelligence isn't the only thing that matters. You might have heard the quote, intelligence gets you the job, but emotional intelligence gets you promoted. So the other traits were initiative and self-assurance. So it could be the initiative and drive to get things done and to aim for a leadership position. Just want to note that the leadership is complex, and having these traits alone doesn't make you a good leader. So we've looked at the textbook leadership traits. We'll now look at the Public Sector Commission framework. So can you pop a like if you've heard of the Public Sector Commission capability framework, just so I know how much detail to go into explaining it. So if you've heard it before, let me know. So it would be people that have worked in, well, public sector, I'd assume. So basically what it is the Public Sector Commission is New South Wales advisor on workforce strategy. It produces many useful resources for those working in public sector and many resources for managers. And they include things for resources for employment, HR, flexible work, it's especially relevant now with COVID-19 and social distancing, and also information about how to perform effective performance reviews. So that there is a link in the reference section that you can have a copy of at the end of the presentation that has a link to the public sector framework. So that's the Public Sector Commission. One of their most well-known pieces of work and important pieces of work is their capability framework. So basically, this just describes a set of traits and standards and skills that people in the public sector are expected to have. So for example, if you're a manager, expected to have this level of finance skills and communication skills. It standardizes jobs across the public sector, so it makes recruiting easier. And it also sets a level or a performance expectation. So many health organizations, including some local health districts, have also taken this capability framework and not only implemented in their recruitment practices and their selection criteria, but they've also implemented these traits in their leadership development programs and based some leadership training around these traits. So what I've done here in our exploration of leadership traits, in this next slide, I've put the textbook traits up against the New South Wales Public Sector Commission framework and tried to match what was similar and note down on the bottom things that don't match. So you can see here that some things map and match really closely. So for example, intelligence and knowledge at the top, and think and solve problems from New South Wales PSC. So that's a strong match. Other things such as integrity and good judgment and manage reform, that's a weaker link. Then I've got at the bottom things that don't match at all. For example, commit to customer service. And that may be because it's more of a customer service, it's more of a skill that is based on many other skills. For example, it involves being good with your communication skills, good with your decisive and motivation. And all of that counts to good customer service skills. So it's a blend. So the other interesting difference in this is competitiveness gets a mention in the textbook, but what doesn't get mentioned in the framework is competitiveness. Instead, we have demonstrate accountability and work collaboratively. And the way I would personally interpret that is that it really shows you what traits are valued in a specific government sector, in a specific health context. Its ability to work collaboratively and be accountable rather than competing with each other. So we all know that patient care is optimized when, for example, the information about the client's treatment and their condition is all shared across different healthcare practitioners and across different sectors that are involved in their care. So we've looked at leadership traits. We'll move on to a very similar topic, and that is leadership styles. So first of all, there's many theories, and what we'll go through today is one of the more simpler theories, and that is the 3 leadership types that I've got here: authoritarian, participative, and delegative. What we'll do is we'll briefly run through each and talk about some situations in your workplace where one would work better than the other or be more effective. So first of all, let's go through autocratic, sometimes known as authoritarian. So this is usually implemented when the situation calls for rapid decision making, and it works if the leader is the most knowledgeable and experienced. But some risk is that it can create a dysfunctional environment. So an example is Bill Gates. Apparently, he's no longer authoritarian, so someone says. So he's more democratic now. For anyone who's watched the Foxtel series Chernobyl, the manager, the night that disaster happened, the character that plays him portrays a very good picture of an authoritarian leader. So that's available on Foxtel if you just want to, as a side note, if you're interested in watching and getting an idea of how this looks like in the workplace. We can also see this kind of leadership implemented now with a situation regarding COVID-19. So it's high stakes and it's high risk. So a lot of the messaging around what we should do in the workplace and the community is very firm. It's very firm and very direct. For example, no more than 2 people going out at once, social distancing, and so on. So the next style we'll look at is the democratic, also known as the participative leadership style, also known as shared leadership. So here the team is involved in the decision-making process, and it's a collaborative process, which takes time. It takes time to evolve and implement. And a last style that we'll briefly run through is the laissez-faire or delegative leadership style. So as I have here, it's least productive for an inexperienced team and an unmotivated team. And some risk is with a lack of defined roles, team members might blame each other for mistakes. So a lot of people might have heard this leadership style before and consider a really hands-back style of leadership, but it's not really doing nothing. So for this style to work, the leader has to put a lot of work into creating a trusted and safe environment where they can get quality work from their staff and while they're working independently as well. And a lot of work does go in over a long period of time to make that work. So if you're interested in finding about what your leadership style is, then have a look at this quiz. So there's 12 questions. Again, the link is in my references at the end. So the advantage of knowing your style is it's good to get a better understanding of yourself and your leadership style, but also when you do this quiz, consider the work team, the situation, for example, the tasks and deadlines and the environment you're working in to really lean on the most appropriate leadership style for the situation and always balance direction. So the autocratic leadership styles with more support and flexibility. So feel free to take that after the quiz. There's no cost to doing that, by the way. So one thing that is really particularly topical right now is working remotely, working virtually, particularly with social distancing, leading a remote team. And that makes me think about the leadership styles and what really works best. So I've got here 3 questions, 3 statements. If you can please grab your phone. So this is an activity for you. So we've got the man with the head and shoulders there. If you can please grab your phone and just vote. It's just what you do is you slide the bar. So you see a dot. If you slide that across, then that's how you vote. So either slide that across or just point to where you want that statement. So On the left, if you really don't agree with statement 1, then you put the slide towards the left. If you really agree, you'll be all the way to the right. I'm going to start the timer and give that 2 minutes. 2 minutes. What you see here, the line down the middle is the average of all statements. I will just be quiet so that you can concentrate on that activity. And after everyone votes and most votes are in, we'll have a discussion about this. So again, no right or wrong answers. Just pick what you think of first. So at the moment, in terms of the current result, people pretty much don't agree or disagree with any of these statements. That's why we see the middle line right down the middle. There's about 50 seconds left to give your input on this question. So as you can see on the timer on the bottom left, there's 10 more seconds till voting closes. And when it closes, I will just leave it there. Okay, so thanks for your input. It's very interesting. So we can see that there is a little bit of a spread as well. And that is because really they're kind of all trick questions. There's really no right or wrong answer for all of them. So in terms of the correctness of these statements, I do have a few few things to say about each of them. Firstly, without skilled, confident management, some managers might resort to micromanagement when the staff are working remotely. So for example, their fear might be, I know I'm not really able to motivate my team and to keep track of their work when they're in the office. So what are the chances that I can do this effectively when they're not under my watch, when they're at home? So in response to that, they might overcompensate and give really onerous requests to their staff. So for example, every day, so you're working Monday to Friday, every day when you get in, give me a list, email me a list of things you want to get done. At the end of the day, email me the same list and a progress report or a sentence of progress on each of those things. And in the middle of the day, we're going to have a webinar. We're going to have a chat, face-to-face chat about your progress so far. So for some staff who don't need this level of management, it can be quite onerous. And the other thing that it does, so it's not only good for the work because the work can become fragmented and distracting if you're having to report every few hours. So it's not good for the work, and it's also not good for the relationship with the staff. For example, a staff member might think, well, when I worked face-to-face with you, I didn't have to report in the morning and then lunchtime and then nighttime before I leave. So there's no issue. There was no issue there. I'm still the same person with the same set of skills, and knowledge and work ethic. So what is the problem with working from home? It might point to, but it might actually think it might be a trust issue. It might be the staff member's suspicion. So this kind of really really strict management style or micromanaging might be okay if the staff member needs it. For example, if they're really new to the team and the work, and if they're really new to remote working, it might be okay initially, but once they get the hang of this, it's better to give the support that's required for that situation. On the flip side of things, working remotely also produces challenges because there could be staff that are working, but they're inaccessible at the times they're meant to be at work, and some managers may not even realize it, or they know that about it happening, but they don't know how to address it. So, okay, so this is, in summary, it's not a case of good managers who are bad at managing remote staff. It's just that remote working tends to magnify the worst habits of poor leaders. So in terms of the third statement, a really solid policy, work from home policy, you can have the clearest, most evidence-based work from home policy, but it's not much without good management. So it's all about balancing the situation and the staff. So there's some tips to remote working. I'll continue the next few slides and continue the topic of lead effectively. So that's our next topic until we move to talk about the team development. So just a few tips to lead effectively. Firstly, use strength-based leadership. So get to know your team and the areas that they wish to develop. But once you do get that information from your staff, then make sure you act on it, because it can look worse to a staff, the fact that they have voiced their development areas in their performance appraisals and reviews, but the management hasn't acted on it. At the same time, you're leaning on your staff members' strength. It's a good idea to build a diverse team as well. So for example, if someone's really good at technology, they might get all the technology-based work. But it's also a good idea to balance that and make sure that that capacity is spread across your whole team, so that you can, for example, run a webinar anytime you like. It doesn't depend on that webinar guy or webinar guru being in the office that day. So keep all staff, let all staff know where to get information on how to keep the organization running, and work on empowering staff so that they can be free to do their work. And this also results in less reliance on the leader. So I have an example that I'd like to share from Health Pathways. So can you please click the like button if you've heard of Health Pathways, just so I know how much detail to explain this in. Okay, so a few people haven't heard of it, a few people have. So I will just explain. So basically, it's a tool that is accessible online through your computer to GPs, allied health, anyone that works with clients in the community. What you do is it's a tool that can be used at the point of consultation. So you could say someone comes in, you go to Health Pathways, have a look at their symptoms and where to direct their care. So where to refer their care. It's a really key resource involved in primary care. Many of our panelists here tonight are involved in this tool. And Megan, I can arrange for Megan to send out some information about this after the event. So just that was a bit of background about the Health Pathways tool. So for this, the team that works behind Health Pathways releases and reviews about 200 pathways a year. For example, gestational diabetes. They've even got a pathway on COVID-19. The manager is Paul, and I just want to share with you an example of him leading effectively in a remote setting, or when he was not involved in the team. So Paul has, and he's okay with me sharing this example. He went on leave for 3 months. And during that time, the number of pathways released was actually slightly above average. So they're one person down. The manager's down, but pathway release is slightly above average. And in an advisory committee meeting, we all joked that it was Paul, he's gone, so he's left the team to do their good work. We all had a good laugh. But in truth, we all know it was good leadership and good management that kept the work going. So not only did the pathways release increase, but staff felt empowered, and staff even took on a development work, which is usually in Paul's role. So a good litmus test of an empowered team is when the team continues to run well when the manager's on leave or when people are working remotely. I've talked to Paul, and his tips on how he achieved that was basically what we have discussed tonight and what we will discuss tonight. He summed it up by saying set clear expectations and instill in the team, instill in the right team, confidence to carry on work as usual. And by the right team, that relates to the leadership styles that we just talked about. So obviously, if you've got a really motivated team and a skilled team versus the one that's really new, your leadership style, as we've discussed, can differ. So that was one case study I wanted to discuss. The next bunch of slides also relate to leading and influencing effectively and building your influence. So other tips are choosing the right method of communicating, to making sure that method is portrayed effectively. So for example, you might have heard meetings, so a quote about meetings. Meetings are where minutes are taken and hours are wasted. So my tip on meetings is basically to have the right people there, keep your meeting brief, stick to the agenda, and take a good list of action items, and avoid meeting fatigue. Don't have too many meetings. Another tip to lead and influence effectively, in addition to choosing the right form of engagement and the right time for it, is to really know your team. So know the type of worker they are, and know their needs from you. So for example, knowing them and the type of work style they have. If you have a really details person that's really risk adverse, when you raise a new idea in a meeting, they might not throw their support for you straight away at that meeting because they like to be prepared. They like to look at the details first. So what you could do there is talk to them before. They like to feel prepared, so give them that information before and ask them what are some of their perceived challenges with your idea. And when you have that knowledge, it actually helps you to raise it in the team where you might have other people that are similar to them and that are also also like the details. So in addition to knowing the work style of your team, also know to lead effectively, you need to know the team's needs and their needs from you. So example of this is when I was starting a management role, and I heard that one of my team members would be a graphic designer. So it's a management role in education development. So before I even met this gentleman, I already started assuming that his needs from me would be graphic design. And I felt very intimidated because I have no skills, no experience in graphic design. So I felt a really strong shortcoming there, that I wouldn't be able to support this person. Let's call him Patrick. I wouldn't be able to support Patrick with his personal development and his needs. So I already thought that my greatest challenge with being, a leader would be Patrick and my support for him. So I assumed too much, so I learned from we all learn from experience. So once meeting Patrick, I found that he is a really experienced staff member, a really great graphic designer. His needs weren't in graphic design at all. He actually had a disability, so he was deaf, and where I could be helpful to him is not with his technical skills, but improving communication pathways to Patrick in the workplace. So they're really little things I didn't initially think of. So for example, the manager that was leaving told me Patrick likes to concentrate. He likes to focus on his work, which is true. But secondly, she also mentioned that with Patrick, so that you can avoid interrupting him, the best way to approach him is to sit down next to him quietly, and then when he sees you, when he stops focusing on your work, then you can get his attention and speak with him. So I actually tried that for a few times, and from experience, it didn't work well. So I would just quietly sit next to him, and then once he realized I was there, he would get a little bit of a shock, and his arms will pop up in the air. I would get a little bit shocked. My arms will pop up in the air. I'd nearly spill a coffee on his crotch. So it didn't work. So when I spoke with Patrick more and more, I found out that his major challenges to getting his work done was communication, obviously with his disability being deaf. So he would make a lot of mistakes because he didn't get clear instructions in a form that really worked for him. So my role as manager there was to really find out the best ways to communicate with Patrick and to convey that to the team. Nothing related to graphic design. I didn't do anything graphic design for him. And I didn't need to build a good relationship with him. So for example, if anyone is working with deaf people, a tip is when they're coming and to get their attention, what you should do is step really loudly. So obviously they're not going to hear you step, but they feel the vibrations through their feet. So they know you're coming, so we won't shock each other when we need to talk to each other. And other things I did was helping to be more part of the team socially, because that was something that where he let his disability stand in the way of him talking to others and getting to know them better. So basically that just sums up a couple of examples about how to know your team and know them, their working styles, and know what they need from you. And that's how you can know how to focus your leadership energies. And lastly, customizing your message. I won't spend too much time on this, but of course, messages have to be transparent, open, and fair. So for example, if a really big message is a team or company structure, you will customize your message depending on who the staff is. So if it's someone that's a senior staff member who has kids and just really spent a lot of time working his or her way up the management chain, then assure them about job security and the fact that they'll maintain their award rate, for example, in the new company structure. If you're talking to a newcomer, then you might focus more on opportunity. So if that newcomer's not looking to stay long, looking to travel after, you just sell it to them by saying it's an opportunity to explore different parts of the business. So when people are safe, their needs are met, and they're not threatened, that's when they can really focus on their work, and that's when you can really get the most out of them. So another tip to lead effectively is to lean on your strengths. So I put here a book that you can buy. It's about $30, but I've also put a link, the high five test. So if you can either buy the book or do the test, the book comes with a code, which you can go online and take a quiz or take a good half an hour to do it. And at the end of it, after doing the quiz either on the book or on the link, you'll get to find out your strengths. And the strengths are grouped into different domains. If you've heard of this before, give it a like, so I won't spend too much time explaining it. So for example, I'll go through them briefly. Executing. So these are people that are good at getting things done. They're good at arranging and controlling tasks, events, and people, and they're very focused people. Influencing. These people have the ability to sell, and they can persuade others of everything and get their support, whether it'll be a support for an idea, a project, a task, or different organizational approaches. So across my own health organization, the least number of people have strengths in the influencing domain. Thirdly, relationship building. So this is the ability to encourage people to work together towards a common goal. A lot of people in New South Wales Health who have taken this quiz in my workplace have this as a real strength. Same as strategic thinking came up quite strongly. So these people are skilled at analyzing information and seeing links and connections. So I wanted to bring this up to really challenge that stereotype of a leader and challenge the thought that you have to be a good influencer, and influencing is the most important thing in good leadership. And I also wanted to note that there's different ways of influencing. You don't have to be that person that just rocks up into the room and gives a really good speech and sells everyone. So you can be a good influencer by leaning on your other strengths. For example, if you're a good executor, people trust you because you get stuff done. And That's how you can build up your influence on other people's, by having that reputation that you will get things done. So a few more tips on being influential. So this is, don't take this picture too seriously. We've been meeting for nearly an hour now, so we're at this stage where we've known each other for an hour. I'm okay, and I'm allowed to put up funny, wacky photos now. Okay, so I just have a few things to say about being influential. It's particularly important because we're living in a state of change. So the way we work, the type of work we're doing, and how we connect, so online, offline, it's all changing. And this has in turn changed our perception of leadership. So now we have more distributed leadership, and we don't need a leadership title to be influential. We don't need a management title to be influential. For example, Instagrammers and YouTubers, they can be immensely influential and not in an official leadership role. So on this topic, I want to talk about positional and personal power. So positional power comes through having authority. So a management title, and you got there, say you got a management title, and you got there through a competitive recruitment process, and you've got years of experience. So that gives you some perception of positional power through your authorization. Other things that people with positional power have is access to information before the team has it, and access to resources. And not only just access to resources, but the ability to allocate resources, which also increases someone's perceived power. If you don't have positional power, then your job is to lean on your personal power. So the things that make up personal power is knowledge, social skills, cultural intelligence, and networking. So for example, knowledge, so really being good at your job, having the qualifications, and social skills, so having the ability to network and interact with others and make them feel comfortable. And cultural intelligence, so being able to read the landscape of the workplace and knowing about the history of the organization. And it's often said with networking, it's not what you know, but who you know. So it's a balance of things. If you're interested in learning more about networking, the second part of the presentation where we bring out the panel, you'll get to learn about the networks involved with Central and East Sydney PHN. So in summary, positional power helps get managerial and operational tasks done. For example, I need your timesheets by 5 p.m. today. Positional power really helps with building your influence, inspiration, and instilling confidence in other people, all very desirable leadership traits. Of course, you can use personal power to boost your positional power, but the other point I want to make here is that you don't need positional power to be influential and to be a good leader. So there's no task that you can stop yourself from doing because you don't have the position. Okay, so a couple more slides, 2 more slides on influencing and motivating staff, and then we'll move on to the stages of team development. So the focus on being influential and motivating staff is really not on yourself, but on other people. So for example, focusing on your relationship with them, making them feel heard, making them feel comfortable, important, and valued. Empathy is also really important. So empathy and investment in your team. Showing an interest in their career and their development, but also them as a person. So if you understand more about them as a person, you can have a deeper relationship with them. So for example, on a Monday morning, you can greet your team. If you know someone in your team more, you can greet them with, hello, how was your week and how was your camping trip? Rather than something more superficial like, hello, I like your scarf. Not that that's a bad compliment. Not that that's a bad compliment anyway. Compliments can be often quite tricky for people, either giving or receiving them. But a good way to give a compliment is and to make the focus on other people is to deflect compliments. So if you're the one receiving it, it's good to say, oh yeah, but Sue was really involved in this team and she was really enthusiastic about this. So this leads into my next point about celebrating others. So when you celebrate others, you create a culture of, you create a positive culture, and you create an encouraging culture as well. It also says to other team members is when someone gets a compliment or they get praise after doing a good job, then it says that it's noticed. So for that person that did it, it says it's worth doing it again. And for someone watching, it's worth doing that. But also make sure your praise and your recognition is genuine and it's appropriate. So I've heard I heard a leadership consultant once say that he was in a office waiting area, the reception area, and they have a staff employee of the month. So they have the name and the photo of someone in the office area. And 2 staff members walked in and they pointed to that and said, well, that's another joke. So it's really important to get feedback on your employee recognition programs. If you have one, if you have implemented one, make sure that the initiative is taken seriously and it's also valued by staff, and it's not going to embarrass them instead. So last slide about being influential. So taking the example of coronavirus that we're currently living, being influential, a big part of that is staying calm and rational, and that's where you get more respect and more. That's where you're seen as being more reliable. For example, when we're stressed, a lot of people tend to panic, fear gets the better of them, they get desperate, and they hoard pasta and they hoard toilet paper. Rational people instead, what can they do? You can forward resources, call in, check your family members, check your work colleagues, see if they're okay. My point here is that you don't need a leadership position to do either of those. You can choose your path. Whether you have a leadership position or not, you can choose to stress or just to remain rational. So this this is the last thing I have about building your influence, and it's best summed up by these quotes here. So better to under-promise and over-deliver than to over-promise and under-deliver. Don't think less of yourself. Think of yourself less. And finally, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. And that kind of, it's a good way to sum up what I just went through in the previous slides. So we're going to move on from building influence, if everyone's okay with that, and we're going to explore the next topic, which is the stages of group development. So this is relevant. So we're at the point now where we discuss leadership traits, leadership styles, and being influential. We're going to put that together and now look at the idea of group development, because depending on where your team's at, you might have to lean on one or more of those skills more than the other. So if you can please just click the like button if you've heard of this, so I know how much detail to go into this or to not go into this. So a few people there. So what we'll do in the next slide is we're going to go through each of these stages briefly and talk about some leadership tips if you are in a team at this stage. So before we go into what to do, I'm going to talk about what not to do. So you might have heard about the term atrocity stories. So this was formed from the research of sociologist Robert Dingwall in 1983. So he's pointed out that some teams they try to move from the forming stage to the adjourning to the performing stage, and they try to build team cohesion through forming a common enemy. So this is where staff join in stories, which is always negative stories about another team, another department, or another agency. So basically, it's creating this us versus them situation where you get closer to someone by forming a common enemy. So a healthier way to create cohesion, particularly when you're forming, is through common visions and values and engaging in the organization's mission. So the leader's role here is the leader has a lot to do in the forming stage to make sure good values are set and to move the team from forming to performing. So let's go through each of those now. So before we do, a few points. So as I mentioned, leader's role is to accelerate the progress towards performing. The stages are not distinct, but it's a gradual transition from one to the other, and a team can move forward and backwards in that progression. So firstly, forming. This is when you have people that are acting like individuals rather than a team. At this stage, everyone's really polite and courteous, except for someone who might be what we call a peacock. So they don't mind, they don't need to fit in, they actually want to stand out at this stage. So that's some behaviors you might be seeing. Some feelings that might be happening in the team at this stage is that everyone might experience some form of anxiety. So this might be expressed differently, or it might be disguised, as we've seen in the peacock with compensatory behavior. The fear of rejection is evolutionary. So we're used to cooperating to survive. So everybody wants to fit in and be cooperative. At this stage, we often lack productivity because people are more concerned with fitting in and their own emotional needs and their own emotional concerns rather than the goal, the end goal. And this situation for some, especially if you're entering a team as a newcomer where people or know each other, it's especially tough. But fortunately, this stage doesn't last too long if someone has a good sense of personal security and grew up with a good sense of personal security. So the leadership focus here is to give your acceptance for the team or the newcomer, and set expectations. So for example, you've heard of the quote, the behavior you walk past is the behavior you accept. So this is a good time to set ground rules and to have an influence over the unwritten ground rules. For example, if you're working at a clinic, that's really hard to find, and you get a lot of calls about patients saying, I'm lost, where are you? You might get that call 3 times a day, which is a lot. So if staff get annoyed with that and they get a call and, for example, look at another staff when that happens and say, and roll their eyes and gesture, oh, it's that question again. If you're a leader and you see that kind of behavior and you walk past it, then your message is that's acceptable. It's acceptable to make fun of patients in a way and laugh at someone for being lost. For another example there is a leader that says they have an open door policy. But what really happens is that their door is closed physically and they have a really strict booking procedure. Whereas if you don't have a booking, you can't see them. So the unwritten ground rule there is that the leader can say one thing and they get away with the other. So that's forming. We'll go into the next stage. This is when boundaries are pushed and the team tries to discover their strengths. This can be really challenging for the leader. So your job there is to continue to offer some encouragement and even responsibility. And responsibility might satisfy someone's need for exertion. It's also good to learn to be okay with challenges and stop seeing it as a threat, or stop responding by trying to exert your authority more and more. So the next stage is norming. So the behaviors you might see here are sharing responsibility, sharing information, cohesion, joking, and social interactions. So the leadership focus here should be continuing to encourage good behaviors from the team and encourage positive unwritten ground rules to develop. Also be okay with the team lead needing you less. So in the forming stage, someone might need more direction, but later on, they know what they're doing. So it's better to step back a little bit and become more of a facilitator and enabler. So at this stage, you really want to give general guidelines now and instill confidence in the team. So the next stage is performing. It's really sad to note that a lot of teams never get to this stage. So in performing stage, we see a high degree of commitment and trust. And the team always looks for improvement and start to question, are things done because it's legacy or is it still necessary? So in here, for the leader, some tips: become more of a colleague and a resource, and jointly set and jointly monitor goals that are challenging to all team members. And of course, don't forget to take time out to to celebrate milestones. The final stage, as we've seen from the graph earlier on, is adjourning. So this is when a team is breaking up. For example, a team restructure or termination. For example, some teams, some government teams, so for example, in construction, obviously that team come to an end when that construction, that the construction is finished. So leadership focus here is to maintain social contact between the team members and also have a really good handover for people that are coming to the team if it's change in staff. Another interesting thing to note about these stages is that it is possible to move backwards in the scale. For example, if you have a new team member arriving, that could influence the team dynamics, and poor management as well can take a team backwards from performing to the earlier stages. So we will do an activity on where you think your team is at, but just firstly, a little test or a little case study to help you identify which team you're at. So take this example. If a team member is having a bad day, if your team's in a forming stage, it's most likely that other team members won't know about it because people are being really polite and keeping personal things to themselves. If your team's in the storming stage, some people may quietly celebrate the fall of what they see as a competitor. And if your team's in the norming stage and the team members, one team member's having a bad day, you might see all the team members rallying around them for support. So let's take the flip side as an example. Say, making generalizations about the team member experiencing success. For example, they were picked to present a healthcare conference. If your team's in the forming stage, some people might feel threatened. If they're in the storming stage, they might feel jealous. And if your team's in the performing stage or norming stage, they'll join in celebration for this team member. So let's do this activity. I've been talking for a while, so I'll start an activity on what stage you think your team's at. So once again, when you see the person at the bottom corner, it's an activity. So get your phone out and have a think about that. I'm going to set the timer to, say, a minute. So 30 seconds, halfway. We've got more than half. It seems like we have more than half the vote. So far we have a lot of people in the norming stage, a lot of new storming teams. And as I mentioned before, a lot of teams don't reach the performing stage, and we can see this year with 2 people saying that their team's in a performing stage. Okay, so thanks for your input there. If you didn't get a chance to vote, that's okay. We've got a few more opportunities for engagement here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the 2 together. We talked about the stages of team development and we talked about leadership styles. We'll put the 2 together and I'll ask you this question. Which leadership style is most effective with a team in the forming stage? I'll give you a minute to do this. And remember what I said earlier, right at the beginning, there's really no right or wrong answers. Leadership is complex, team dynamics is complex. So less than half a minute for voting for this question. So what we have next is another question, and then we'll start wrapping up the presentation side of this webinar. And at that point, we'll start the panel. But I'll just wait a few more seconds till we get more input on this question. Okay, so we have a lot of people voting for autocratic and democratic, none for laissez-faire, and that's exactly correct. Your leadership style in this stage should be between these two. So well done. Second question, so similar to the last one. Say your team's now in the performing stage. What leadership style would be the most appropriate and the most effective? I'll set that for 1 minute. So if you finish voting, we still have half a minute left, so feel free to take a breather, take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about some takeaway messages and talk about where to from here. So what things you can implement in your workplace. 10 more seconds. Okay, so a lot of people have indicated democratic and laissez-faire, and that's general. This is making a lot of generalizations about the situation, but yes, it would be somewhere in between democratic and laissez-faire being the most effective for teams in performing stage. But as I mentioned before, leadership is complex, team dynamics are complex, and there's no hard right or wrong. So it can actually be in some situations, autocratic can be the correct way to go. So thanks for your participation there. What we have is 2 more activities, and one of them is takeaway messages. So as you can see here, this is another activity. What I'd like you to do there is, given everything we've discussed today, what are the 3 takeaway messages? So if you can just type 3. What we're doing here is we're building our word cloud. So with your words, try to keep it to just 1, 2, maybe 3 words. Once responses start coming in, a word cloud will be built. So a word cloud is where we take your responses, and the bigger the word appears, the more people are voted for that response. What I'll do here is I'll set again the timer for a minute. We've got some really good input coming through. Adaptability and structure. So half a minute. Okay, so I did see that a few votes are coming through, so I'll still open it and set another 10 seconds. Okay, just a few more seconds. Thank you very much for your input there. So we can see some really strong themes coming through. So adaptable remains a big takeaway for tonight. communication, structure, and knowing your team. Okay, so last activity. So this is the last activity I have for you tonight. So building on what we've just done, let's take it one more level up and write a statement, just a really short statement about what you can do in your workplace, what you can implement immediately to improve your self-leadership and to improve effectiveness in your workplace. So at the end of this, everyone's results for all the questions will be shared. I'll set the timer for 2 minutes. So there's plenty of time left. We've got over a minute. If you've finished, feel free. This is a really good time to take a breather, take some deep breaths, walk away, get a drink, and take a break. So you won't miss anything. We've still got a minute left, and everyone will get a copy of these results. There's some really good ideas coming here, so take the quizzes recommended. So that's a really short thing you can do. Teamwork, to things like teamwork, so building up teamwork, and that's obviously a long-term action and a long-term goal. Continue to build integrity, get to know team members, getting to know your own strengths and the team's strengths. We're getting some really great responses here. We've got 20 seconds left. I'm really liking all these suggestions, so I'm going to cancel the timer and reset it and give more time. I'll give a minute more. So if you're finished, as I mentioned, feel free to take a break. And just a preview of what's next, we're going to hear from our panel members for some question and answer. Before that, we'll begin with a short introduction to the Central and Eastern Sydney PHN and the networks that make up a part of this PHN. We have some very senior people joining the panel as well. So it's a great opportunity to ask them any questions about leadership. So all our panelists have leadership experience in their work through advisory committees and obviously from their network, the Central and Eastern Sydney PHN network. Okay, so thank you. Thanks for these responses. So at this point, I'm just going to hand back to Megan to talk about the Central and Eastern Sydney PHN member networks.
Thanks, Peggy, and thanks, audience. What an amazing contribution and a way to interact with each other. Well, firstly, I wanted to, I guess, lean on a few things that Peggy was talking about earlier. So Central and Eastern Sydney Primary Health Network have 7 member organisations. Those are made up of 5 GP companies, an allied health network, and a community network. So collectively, we use that combined expertise to advocate for the needs of our general practice, allied health, and community in the region. Membership to these local networks costs around $110 per financial year, but there's a lot of benefits in joining. So leading on from what Peggy was saying around leadership, it's an opportunity to really influence primary health within Central and Eastern Sydney. it also provides free access to continuing professional development across the region. So with everything going on at the moment, we're making real leaps and strides in our webinar technology to make sure that that's still continued and delivered to our member. It also gives you really strong contribution to strategic advice. So as a member of the committees, you'll have opportunity to join councils, networking events, and really engage and interact with people and members within your primary health network. So the directors of each of the companies also meets with us on a regular basis and joins key forums throughout the year. And this reason, the member companies, we really need active and engaged members within Central and Eastern Sydney Primary Health Network to let us know what's going on in the ground and really influence and change some of that service that's delivered to the consumers within our region. So thank you again. There will be more information available on our website. I'll send that out to you shortly. What we can do now is I'm going to open up for the panel. If you have any questions, we'd love to see them come through into our questions box, and Peggy will introduce each member. Now, unfortunately, Trent Carruthers, who was a panelist, is having some technical problems. So I'm going to hand back to Peggy and I'll open up the video and information for our panelists now.
Hello, so just trying to get my webcam up, but I guess I can start talking without that as that comes in. So I'm Peggy. I'm part of the Central and Eastern Sydney Allied Health Network. And just to extend from what Megan has mentioned, we're an organisation that provides support to allied health, and some of our services include practice support. So someone who will come to your organisation from the PHN to help you all sign all kinds of matters, for example, technology and patient care and things with patient care. You can also access in our organisation an interpreting service, obviously CPDs, as Megan has just mentioned. And in the past, we've also supported members with their professional development outside of the events that we have provided ourselves through the Central and Eastern Sydney PHN. I do also want to mention that we also have an option for associate membership if you don't meet the criteria of being in allied health. So if you have an interest in the area or the profession, we're currently recruiting directors as well, but that position's only open to members and unfortunately not associate members. Next up, I'd like to introduce Janet. So what we'll do is each chair of these networks, as you've seen on your event flyer, will have a brief rundown about themselves and their network, and then we'll open up the question and answer and discussion. So handing over to Janet now.
Hi everybody, my name's Janet Green. I'm the chair of the Sydney Health Community Network. So we're a group of mostly organisations and some individuals who are involved primarily in the community sector and in place in order to provide a community perspective in the operation of the PHN, and also to advocate around health community issues or community health issues. So our members are mostly organisations that are involved in a range of fields across the community sector in the PHN area, and in quite a wide range. We have quite a number of members who are involved in the mental health area, people involved in aged care and disability, and people who work more generally in sort of wellness type of services. We're open to membership for individuals and as well as to organisations. I guess as a network, we've not been active in doing CPD, mainly because most of our members actually do that through their own professional organisations. but we are at present having a bit of a look at how we work within the PHN context. So there's some quite interesting conversations happening about our future roles. But I think the most important thing is around our potential to advocate around health, community health issues, and so things like wellness and wellbeing, health pathways, social prescribing, some of those sort of things are things that many of our members are interested in, as well as obviously issues around what's happening in aged care and the disability sector and mental health as well. So that's probably it from me for now. Happy to answer some questions later. On a personal level, I am the CEO of a small not-for-profit organisation working in the East, and we work in programs with older people, people who are very socially isolated, domestic violence, things like that. So and I've worked in that industry for very many years. Okay, thanks, Peggy.
Thank you, Janet. So particularly with client healthcare moving towards community-based practice and patient-centered care, it's a great community to be a part of. So earlier on, if you didn't select that you're a part of Allied Health and you didn't select you're a GP, then most likely the community organisation for you to network with is Janet's Sydney Health Community Network.
Yeah,
okay, so
that's correct.
Thank you, Janet. By the way, I just wanted to also just let people know, if you have any questions, then you can ask any time during this section, during this hour. So type, or if you're confident, you can ask to unmute yourself. In the meantime, we have Dr. Margot Woods, and she is representing the Central Sydney GP Network. So Margot, handing over to you.
Thank you, Peggy. And can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes, lovely. Before I do mention that, I'd just like to congratulate you and the PHN on a fantastic transition under a lot of pressure. And I'm in the same boat with my university job, making sure that everything now, the university is open, but it's open online. So I'd like to say that was a really very impressive transition. And thank you very much to Peggy and to the PHN for the support. I'm a GP in the Central Sydney area. So we really are the inner west of Sydney. And we're one of the older GP networks. You'll meet Hilton soon. He's from another one of the older networks. We've been around for quite a long time. So we support the GPs, and as I said, in the inner west. We have around about 450 members, and unfortunately that has been sliding a little bit in the last few years, but we're really keen to get our membership up. And we have 4 board members, and we've very deliberately have I guess if we talk about leadership, we share the leadership around. So we've actually make sure that the chair gets handed on and that the next person gets nurtured up to be able to be chair. And we all have a go at chairing meetings and playing all of the roles, whether that be secretarial or advocacy, and trying to make sure that, and the other really big focus is making sure that we've had some younger GPs join, and very keen to have people come and observe what we do. Any of our members are allowed to come to a board meeting and observe, so very keen to get more on the ground from our members. I guess the main things that the main roles we have is really advocacy for our general practices, so that includes the nurses, allied health that work with us, and also I'd really like to point out patients. And I guess one of our main things that we've been focusing on is advocacy for our less advantaged patients, particularly around access to outpatients, because so many of the services have stopped, and obviously everything's suspended at the moment with COVID, but prior to that it was becoming increasingly difficult for people who don't have good incomes to actually access more equitable health care. So that's been one of our main focuses. We're lucky enough also to have enough money to generate a grant that we give out each year, and at the moment that's been lovely to be able to fund a speech pathologist to work with young Aboriginal mums and their children to try and get those children up to speed. You know, we're starting school on an even footing with some input, and that's been a really exciting thing to be part of. I guess the thing that I never set out to be a leader at all. I certainly didn't have those sort of leadership traits, and probably came from a family of definitely authoritarian was the mode. We were certainly seen and not heard, and so that's been an interesting journey for me, because that's definitely not my style, and I've had to learn a lot along the way. But I think that the most interesting thing for me really is having the opportunity to go onto some of the committees and to go into some of the liaison groups, and actually both learn what's happening behind the scenes. So to learn, for example, what's happening at RPA, and to actually be able to voice the clinician's voice, because I think you all will know that if you are a clinician, it's not, we have different eyes and different needs to people who are perhaps more in the management of in the health system. And I think it's just so critical that we are there advocating for our as I said, practitioners, staff, and our patients. So I think I think that's the main things, Peggy. As just a personal, I guess, for me, I said I'm a GP in Rozelle. I've got a couple of the hats. I'm also run the discipline lead for general practice at the University of Notre Dame. So I've been exactly the same as you, transitioning across to, we've had to withdraw our students temporarily, but while we get to see what the lay of the land is for them and get everything online. So it's been quite chaotic. And also I write, I'm one of the editors on Health Pathways. So thank you for that plug, Peggy. I agree. I use it every day in my clinical work. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Margo. It's a great summary of your network, and also a great summary of how the networks are intertwined, and that's the kind of environment we work in healthcare to achieve the best results. That's a combination of input from community, GPs and allied health and private practitioners. So thank you, Margo. We'll go on to now Dr. Hilton from GP Crew. So handing over to you. Unmuting, Megan. We can just get some help from Megan in the background there.
Okay, well, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Well, that was a very impressive presentation by you, Peggy, and an equally impressive presentation by Janet and Margo. So I'm fourth in the queue. Not very difficult to beat those three. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a GP of 40 years, roughly, getting into the twilight zone. Now, the twilight zone, facing the biggest challenge of my personal and medical career. But I think we have to just all press on and hopefully support each other. This is a time when networks are extremely important. And also, and Margo will agree, the PHN requires input from us all the time. And that input can be positive and it can be negative. And I know Margo and myself are not shy to tell them when things are a little bit slack. But by and large, I've been quite impressed with the PHN. I know they've got a difficult job at present because of supplies and things like that. And all my members are phoning, come on, you're chair of GP Crew. How come we can't get? But, it goes down the chain. That aside, GP Crew has morphed out of the old Southeastern Sydney General Practice, which covered Southeastern Sydney, sort of south of Waverley, all the way down the coast and up Botany Road, just before the inner suburbs of Alexandria. And we were fortunate in our evolution in the sense that we had some foresight and we bought property for our division office in Rosebery. And when the GP Crew then, Southeastern Sydney Division of General Practice joined with Eastern and formed the Eastern Sydney Medicare Local. Initially, they took rent in our offices, and then they were just too small and they moved fairly close by. We were able to lease our property for a while, and we were lucky enough at the time when there was a property boom. We were part of a consortium and we were bought out by a developer. And that was fortunate in the sense that we managed to get a nice profit out of that, and we've invested that profit, and hopefully it's not going to be withered out now with the pandemic that's going on. But that gives us a little bit more leeway to offer a little bit more to our members in terms of mainly not only educational, but we really believe in a philosophy of getting together as colleagues and our partners as well. And so we've had a tradition of having an annual weekend education, which we pay for, or we pay for probably 85%, and there's about a 15% member contribution, which covers the member and their partner. And we've been lucky enough to have wonderful meetings in the Blue Mountains in Bowral, and last year we went over to Tasmania. We had something planned even better and bigger and better in September this year, but I don't think it's going to happen. That aside, so I mentioned we cover the GPs in the southeastern part of Sydney. Our biggest problem is that we haven't got, and we're not getting renewal of young doctors. And I think Margot's got a similar problem, but I'm not sure if we got more acute. I know I speak to Wayne Cooper, and it seems to be a problem across the board, and it's such a shame. When I go to meetings we organize, and even meetings organized the PHN, our small group learning, I look around and I only see bald heads, grey hair, and older people. I don't think I ever see someone under the age of 45. So this is an appeal from the heart. All those young doctors in our area or registrars to really come on board. You know, and we'd love you to come on board. We'd love you to take an active role in GP crew that you can transition over the years. It takes a little while, and you know, come onto the board. We've still got 3 places open. We've got 4 board members, and we do rotate a little bit, but we have difficulty in getting new members, and our colleagues of similar age said, no, I'm too old for that. We can't find the young ones. So this is again an appeal from the heart. All those young doctors out there, please put up your hand, come and join a board meeting if you like. Absolutely welcome to do that. Our other role, of course, is, as Margot said, is advocacy. So we've advocated tirelessly with the Prince of Wales Network campus, mainly the adult hospital. We'd love to get a little bit more cooperation. We still seem to have a little bit of hurdles and not sort of listening to the GP voice, but we don't stop trying. I'm currently on 2 or 3 committees there, trying to get things going. And of course, we're now supporting Southeastern Sydney Health Pathways, which is the new guy on the block. And like Margot said, it's a magnificent resource. I have not only my pathway, but Margot, you'd be happy to hear I have yours as well open. And it's minimized to the bottom of my screen. So I can't find one, I use yours, okay? Absolutely fantastic. And sometimes in my practice, I do drain people from Margot's area as well. So it's wonderful. So I don't always know people at Prince Alfred campus, but it's all there. Pathways are there, the referral pathways are absolutely magnificent. So all, as we say, all good goes to you guys, and keep up the good work. Look, other than that, I think I've given an overview. I myself am based in Mascot, which is very convenient because it's almost walking distance to the PHN. And at this time of need, when I can't go to the gym, I think I'm going to do this on a once-a-week basis and join Michael, our CEO, for a cup of coffee and get exercise at the same time. Happy to obviously contribute in the group discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilton. So there's a very good summary. So what I'm getting from all the network chairs tonight is there is plenty of opportunity for engagement.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of opportunities. So Megan, if we can please, after this meeting, send out some information about how to get involved in any of these networks. And she's just actually messaged me, said it's done. Very efficient. very efficient PHN. So thank you. So it's a great way, as I mentioned during the presentation, networking is really important. In this network, Central Needs City PHN, we've got a really good representation and cross-section across community, allied health, and GPs. It's a fantastic network to be a part of. It's a family. There's plenty of opportunities to engage on any level you choose, or either just coming to events like this and participating, or even seeking a leadership role. There's opportunity currently, vacancies across everyone we've seen today, and would love to hear from you. Would love to hear fresh blood. There's not necessarily any experience needed, and we're really supportive as well. Each network's a bit different, so we'll, if you're interested, we'll carry on that discussion later. So what I'd like to do now is just open up this session for all panelists. Now that you've heard about the panelists, a bit about their background and their network, feel free to ask questions about any of that, and obviously ask questions about their leadership experience, their leadership role, and the challenges. We've already got some questions coming through. So I have one Megan has forwarded me. I'll just read that out to everyone. And after I've done that, I'll open it up to anyone, any chairs today to answer that. So the question is, thank you for this question. It's a really good question, very relevant. So how do you effectively lead in a time where you suddenly lose key resources you thought you would have access to throughout the project or throughout the work, especially in times like these with rapidly changing circumstances? Fantastic question. Now, I'd also like to add that rapidly changing information as well and restrictions. So I'm throwing that open to Dr. Hilton.
Yeah, look, I'll say something. Look, I have to compliment this PHN for their rapid update of if you go on PHN website, there's a section right on the main page on coronavirus. So that's updated almost daily. Over and above that, the PHN staff has been very, from our perspective, from my personal perspective, and speaking to members, shooting out emails about ordering masks and things like that. And there's a heap of resources and links. And Health Pathways was also written a coronavirus pathway, and I'm sure that's been updated. I haven't watched it that carefully. Is that correct, Margaret?
Every day, each day. Yep.
Each day it's updated. So that's my one answer. It is tricky. It's a whole new world for us. As a GP of almost 40 years, you know, to have to suddenly practice medicine in this sort of remote way is tricky, and there's a lot of anxiety around, tremendous amount of anxiety, particularly amongst our older patients. And I think the other answer from an individual, I operate a solo practice, so it's all in my hand, but I'm very lucky. I've got 3 very able receptionists who job share, and they're all very mature and extremely helpful. So we train and update. I train and update them virtually daily now, and I think from that point of view, and perhaps that's where the PHN has a role too, because it's not only supporting us as individual health practitioners. There is a role, and they do support practice staff. Besides nurses, that's the front desk and the administrative staff. I'm aware there are programs, and I think that's another good plus for the PHN.
I'd like to actually mirror what you've said, Hilton, because I think for me in times like this, it's really finding where's the rock that I can stand on, and for me that's definitely where is my truth. And I think there have been people that have really stepped up and given us that solid rock, and PHN's certainly been one of them. My Health Pathways, and the one that I go to every single day is the College of General Practitioners, who put out daily excellent information. I know that it's going to be there every day. I know it's laid out in a way I can find the right information. So for me, it's just, I know it's changing all the time, but it's a matter of going, well, where's my rock? And that's the rock I'm on. And I guess the other thing is that we're all very different sorts of people. And I guess I've always been someone who's very, I get quite excited by change, probably more so than some. So I'm actually finding that this is a time, even though it is actually obviously very unsettling, it's a time that, I'm celebrating telehealth. I think it's something that should have happened a long time ago. I don't think it's a replacement for seeing our patients, and I'd like to congratulate everybody out there who's transitioned basically within a week. We have gone from seeing our patients, as we have for generations, into using technology that, yes, it's a bit ropey. And today I saw every single person I tried to get onto FaceTime and didn't succeed once, but I did do the telephone for 90% of the time. Then I realised I had no reception in my room, and that was the problem. But anyway, I tried, and we're going to get something to boost the signal into my room when I get back to work the next time. But I think it's been an exciting time, and there are so many learnings for us. And I think it's a time when we all have to listen. Everybody's got a good idea, and I guess for me, change is not a one-way street. To kind of, let's test it, did that work? And I think the other thing that's been fascinating is watching all the practices work out how on earth we're going to get all these flu vaccines done, which I can't do on the telephone, and how I'm going to prioritise my vulnerable patients, get them in and not expose them to anything. And there's been some fantastically creative ideas coming up, and I'm really proud of us, all of us in health. All of us have been really doing our bit and working together, and I think that will actually build the team more. And you know, I think we've been reaching out to our colleagues and being very, I guess that's the word, collaborative, isn't it? That everybody trying to work together to get the best outcome. So I'm really proud. Congratulations, everybody. I think you've done really well.
Yeah. Thank you, Margot. So what I'm getting at is some of these key themes coming here is leaning on resources, leaning on your networks that are previously built up, and also maintaining a positive attitude, looking for opportunity amongst the challenges and opportunity for innovation. And also collaboration is something that could really facilitate that process along. So during these times, Margot, Dr. Hilton, you've given some really great tips on procedures that we can take and tools that we can use. Let's not forget one of our most valuable resources are people. So during this time, when you're trying to get your work done and your resources are taken away from you, you're not sure what's going on, instructors are changing, what are some feelings that your staff, your most important resources might be feeling? And that might be about anxiety for their self, job security as well. Are they, what's going to happen with their role? So it's just having a little bit of empathy to understand stuff and try and address that first. And that's another way of trying to go about in getting the best out of people. So it goes back to what I was mentioning about, so knowing what people need is that information, that support, and knowing, just using a bit of empathy. And that's not just irrelevant to, you know, in a clinical example with COVID-19 and with doctors and allied health. If you work in the community, if you work on long-term projects, that's also a similar example. Janet,
I can sort of respond. I mean, our situation's obviously very different, but you know, facing the same challenges. And Margot, I'm probably a bit with you. I don't mind a bit of change, and for me, it's a bit of a challenge. You know, it's a positive challenge. I think kind of my reflections. We had a big meeting of our leadership team this afternoon, and we really settled on some changes in the way we work, because we're seeing people appearing in our services, and we've completely transformed from an organisation that's on about social connection and seeing people and doing things with people and creating opportunities for people to do things together and meet other people is really our core business. And we've gone from that 2.5 weeks ago, to pretty much everything we're doing now is online and over the phone and so on. So, and in many ways, I would agree with you, Margot. It's been a great opportunity to actually explore doing some of those things in different ways, because just like you have with the telehealth, because you know, it's really, you know, freed up quite a lot of resources and enabled us to use our resources in different ways and find skills in our team. I'll give you an example. We've got we do quite a lot of work with vulnerable families, and we also, one of the other things that we do is, you know, act as a sort of key community organisation, a community information resource. So about 2 weeks ago, we have what we call a crisis directory, so about services that are available for people in the community when they're in some form of crisis, and obviously we're seeing plenty of those now with you know, some of the food security issues and the anxiety, and even like people who were evicted before these new eviction laws came in and now sleeping in their car down at the beach. So we've got, you know, we're seeing people in all sorts of, you know, different situations. And so about 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, our team we decided that we would update our crisis directory, and we would do it every day about services, the changes in service delivery, because it's just been across the board. Everybody's had to change their service model. So we now do that every day. It goes on our website every afternoon, so it's up to date every single day, which has just been a phenomenal effort. But in the process of doing that, we discovered that one of our younger community workers has some hidden talents that we'd never been aware of, and he's now producing every couple of days a podcast for people in the community, telling them, just partly reassuring, partly reiterating those messages about, stay home, stay safe, all that sort of stuff, as well as, just directing people how to find this information. So I think that for us, the big learning out of the last few weeks has been the value of flexibility and the value of agility for an organisation. Being on top of things on a daily basis, and we get, I'm sure everybody's getting vast volumes of information, but sort of being able to synthesize that and get it out to people in a kind of easily consumable way is important. We've also really, I guess, there's a bit of a tendency in the sort of work we do that we try to do everything for everyone, and we've decided that we're not able to do that in this context. So we've really focused on what our core business is in these months of the coronavirus, and actually completely, as of this afternoon, reorganised how our teams are put together. So we previously sort of had our teams organised by the sort of client group we had, so working with families, working with older people, etc. And this afternoon we threw that kind of out the window, and now we have a team of people working on food security and how to get food to people's homes, a team of people working on how our whole sort of communication and information, another team of people we're doing weekly, daily, whatever is needed, phone calls to people who are really isolated. So another team of people doing that, and what messaging we're getting out. And it's been, things we've thought about for a long time. We probably would have spent months or years thinking about doing them, and we've done it in 2 weeks, which is, pretty amazing.
Good comes out of adversity, doesn't it, Janet?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you, Janet. We do have a participant.
Can I just share one more thing? Sorry.
Yes.
I was on another webinar the other day, and it was around working with older people living in the community. And the person who was doing the presenting said something which I think is kind of relevant to this discussion about leadership today, and that is that in this sort of time, this is the time for your leaders to shine. If we're going to be really responsive and do well, it'll be the people who shine that will lead that process.
Can I add to that? I think it's I'd add that it's the leaders are not necessarily the ones that we have labelled as leaders in the beginning. I think that's where this has given so many opportunities for people to step up with ideas and initiative and actually do things. And I think it's another. I am a bit of a Pollyanna, sorry, but I think it's been a really exciting time to actually allow people to rise up and to shine, not just the ones who are already labelled as leaders.
Excellent point.
I agree with that. Yeah.
One of the key messages of tonight. So thank you so much for your contributions. Gabriel has their hand raised. So what Megan will do is she will unmute Gabriel to introduce themselves really briefly and then ask their question. If you're not comfortable with actually having your audio, you can always type your questions and we'll repeat that to the group. Yep, so Gabriel, you're now unmuted, so you're okay to speak. All right, he's here. Megan, while we're waiting for that, is there another question in line? Okay. So while we're getting
one of the questions that has come through is you mentioned a show that was for autocratic leadership with Bill Gates. I've just missed the name of that. If you could just give that again.
Yeah, so the show was Chernobyl. So you know the power plant disaster. So that the name of the show is actually the name of that town. It's a mini series. It can be accessible through Netflix. There's about six episodes.
Is that about Netflix? Maybe it's you can buy it. You can get it on Google Play. It's produced by HBO. It's magnificent.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, really good. That is such a good example. If you have time to watch it, it really does show how disaster develops and how critical things. It's a combination of poor processes, poor communication, and inappropriate leadership as well, and inability to draw the best out of the staff and make them feel comfortable to do their job. So, for example, you see, I won't ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but you'll see a threatening behavior that sometimes in crisis that the manager was portraying to people and staff members that were already really stressed with the situation alone. So at that situation, you don't want to make them even more scared. Like, if you can't do this, you're going to lose your job. It's a time to offer your support. We can also see another interesting point that TV show brings up is also the lack of accountability. So people not trying to deflect the blame on other people rather than working together collaboratively towards a more sensible solution. At this point, I might hand back it to Megan as well. So if there is still a question, we're trying to wrap up now, but there's anything urgent. Okay, so I'll hand back to Megan, so thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. And thanks again to Peggy and our panel for their time this evening. I know that I've taken a lot from it and really thank them for their time, especially during such a busy time. What we will be doing is there will be an online evaluation form sent to you very shortly that needs to be completed within the week to enable to get your certificate of attendance. So please don't delay in sending that through to us. We'd love to hear your really honest feedback. This is all new technology for us, so we'd love to hear your honest comments and constructive thoughts around how we can improve. Once you've completed this, your certificate will be issued. That will be within 2 weeks. So just give a little bit of time for processing. But if there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to let us know. We'll also be sending out links to the surveys mentioned in tonight's webinar, and this will be available online for all of our attendees if you want to go back and have a look through. Also to mention, we will be sending out the details of our member networks. So if you have any questions about how those work, please join us. We've got a webpage dedicated to those services online. And you can also contact us. We'll be sending out the email for any questions that you might have following tonight. All right, thank you, everyone. I hope you've really taken a lot from this and hope to see you as part of our member network shortly.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was